Hi, we're live.
Hi.
Welcome. Welcome, everybody, to Tea Talks. I'm Alana Purdak. I am sitting in for our regular host, Sharon Gill and Sarah Loden today, and they have been kind enough to trust me with running Tea Talks. And with that, I decided to have somebody on the show today who is very dear to my heart, my sister, Lisa Levine. Welcome.
Hi, sis.
And Lisa, when I invited Lisa to do our tea talk today, Lisa is a breast cancer survivor, and she doesn't really talk about it much. It's 15 years ago, and I thought her story is so important. She said, "Well, what are we going to talk about? And what am I going to say? And what are we going to call this talk?" And at the end of the day, we really, and we talked for just a few minutes, and I said, "We're going to call it." Listen to your body. And that's what Lisa did. So, Lisa, I am going to turn it over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And then, if you could just share with our audience a little bit about your story and how you were diagnosed.
Sure. So, hello. I'm 55. I am an office manager at Aventura Wellness, a chiropractic office. I fell into chiropractic because of my sister marrying a chiropractor, and I have been leading this lifestyle since I'm about 21 years old. My story for me, I was diagnosed at 40. Um, it was interesting. I had never had a mammogram. I had never really thought about breast cancer or anything, regarding myself. Uh, but one day I kept wanting to touch my breast because I felt tingling. And I just kept touching it. And I remember getting out of the shower, telling my husband, I just feel tingling. I've heard there's this doctor down the street that you don't need insurance. And you could go in and get a mammogram same day, you pay cash, and you're done. And he's like, you know what? If you're nervous about something, you're 40, go do it. And that was an interesting day. I went to the doctor. She was a lovely woman. We did the mammogram. My mammogram, I had small, dense breasts, so the mammogram couldn't really see anything. So she suggested an ultrasound. Again, since I had gone and it was like a concierge practice, she recommended let's do the ultrasound now. We did the ultrasound, and she says to me, it's impossible for you to feel anything, but where you're pointing, I see a cluster of cells. I'd like to do a biopsy just to see if it's a cyst. So again, all in the same day, she's like, let's go in the other room and we'll do a biopsy. She goes to drain what she thought was going to be a cyst, and she took my hand and she said, it's not a cyst, let's call your husband. Again,
Wow.
same day, I call Steve and I said, this is really weird, you need to come. She's getting, I'm at the doctor and they want to do a biopsy, a needle biopsy, again, all the same day. She does the needle biopsy, and then we have to wait a few days. And she said, whatever it is, you're a young mom, you'll be okay. So I said, okay. And I didn't really, think about it. Well, obviously I thought about it, but I believed her. So again, that was all in one day. And I realized how lucky I am that I was able to do that all in one day. Um, Results came back a few days later and they were inconclusive. And the doctor called me and she said, I've been meaning to buy a more invasive machine that will let me be able to do a different type of biopsy. And this was a biopsy where you kind of get like smushed into a mammogram machine and they pull pieces of tissue from all different parts of your breast. So we had to wait for her to get the machine. She got the machine, and that was probably one of my least favorite days. It was not a fun test at all. We did it, And I think I was with my sister at a Strides for Safety
Yeah,
meeting when we got
sure.
the results that it was malignant. So that was a weird day. It was a lot because, again, this whole thing happened within 2 weeks. I was very lucky with the time frame. So comes back positive. Now what? My father-in-law is a physician. He's a cardiologist, retired now, and he was with the Sinai group. And he said, "We have a great doctor at Mount Sinai. I want you to, go see him." So again, magic happens. I get right in with the doctor, and he's like, shows me what it is, and starts talking about different options. For me, I said, I've nursed my children. I nursed them for a year and a half each. My boobs have served me well. I'm okay with, if there's cancer in me, I could get rid of it. That's what I'm willing to do. So we kind of like talked about that because there was different options. Like, do once you do the surgery, you might have to go on, a chemo drug or whatever, radiation. I was like, I'm willing to do the surgery. So my boys were at sleepaway camp, and I wanted to wait for them to come back. We scheduled the surgery a week before, and this was in August. So again, all of this happened within like 6 weeks. It was very, very quick. The week before my scheduled double mastectomy, the doctor called me and he said, I think we should do a lumpectomy. I want to make sure that we're not being too aggressive. And I was like, okay. Again, I really trusted him. He was such a kind man. So we did the lumpectomy the week before the scheduled surgery, came back in the margins, and he said, okay, now I feel like we can move on and do the double mastectomy.
So at that point, you had a double mastectomy. Was it like 2 weeks after your diagnosis? 3 weeks?
No. So I was diagnosed in July, and then I had all the answers by the end of July, but my boys were in camp. So I did the surgery like at the end of August.
Okay.
But they did fit me in the week before for the lumpectomy. And so I was also very fortunate. Our sister-in-law, who is no longer with us, she was a nurse, and she came to be with me for the surgery, and kind of like walked me through what the process was going to be. Which, it helps to have advocates around you. I will say I had the most supportive family. One of the things that I've heard a lot is it's very sad when people have to do this alone, and I never felt alone. I always felt super grateful that I had, we have the best family. So it was, now what? Like, we'll get through this like we do everything else, and we learn those lessons early on.
We mobilized.
Yes, we mobilize, and we get stuff done. One thing I will say that I think is super important, for me, I was very clear what I was willing to do and what I wasn't willing to do. And even though I was diagnosed at 40, I've been all holistic and organic, leading this lifestyle since I'm 21. So I had a very strong understanding of my body and the body systems and how it works. So when those options were given to me about chemo and radiation, and again, this is for me, my personal choice, those were not going to be things that I was willing to consider. So because of that, it's also kind of a gift to be able to have that clear head, because when you get that diagnosis, you can never prepare. Like you just, it
It's life
literally,
changing. It's
it
life changing.
literally takes your breath away, no matter what, no matter who you are. It just takes your breath away. And my biggest thing that I could say is press the pause button, because you're going to get a lot of well wishers that have a lot of different thoughts and opinions, and they mean well, but you have to be able to like press that pause button and know what's right in your gut. And as Alana said, listen to your body. So for me, that was, pressing the pause button, knowing what I was willing to do and what I wasn't willing to do. Kind of, it's empowering, and I was very comfortable with my choice.
And so, Lisa, so you ended up having the double mastectomy,
Mhm.
and from there, so you had the double mastectomy, you had a lot of support. Then what were the next steps for you? What were the choices you had to make?
So back, I'm pretty tiny, and they've changed a lot with the procedures now, where they do like one-step mastectomies. For me, that wasn't an option, and sometimes people would like take fat from other parts of your body. I didn't have any extra to give, so I did expanders. So that was, honestly not fun. But again, I don't think they do that anymore. One of the things that they'll do is they'll test you for BRCA gene. I was negative, but like 90% of breast cancers have nothing to do with BRCA. Um, but I did get tested for it because it's one of the things that they want to know more information. The other thing was I had to meet with a doctor that, basically wanted me to do the chemo drug for 5 years. And again, like I already knew my decision, and I was able to be very comfortable and confident when I met with him to decline it. He did not like that. This was not my surgeon. This was like a doctor that they
Oncologist.
kind of just placed me with, that they had to check their boxes to make sure that they did what, they didn't want to get in trouble for not giving me all of their recommendations. Um,
Let me ask you a question, Lisa. Peter on our team is asking, it was such a big decision you made in such a short time. Did they know what kind of cancer it is? Was it super aggressive? Did you have to make this decision based on that kind of information?
no, I think I made the decision that I didn't want to, it was early, it was isolated, and I knew that I didn't want to like live with getting tested every 6 months for mammograms and ultrasounds. Like I did not want to do that. I felt in my mind, yes, it was an aggressive surgery, but I did feel that I like I said, I had nursed my kids. Maybe if it was a different time in my life and I was a young mom before babies, I might not have made the decision that I did. But I felt like it's okay. Like I was okay with my decision. I just knew that my body, for whatever reason, created an environment that had cancer, and I wanted to remove what I could, and then completely, even though again, I was already like, super clean and organic and did all the things, there were things that I wasn't doing that I didn't even realize, to be honest. Like my journey has changed so much. My regiments have changed through the years, and I've evolved. And look, my decision now may be different than it was back then, as far as, I might have said, maybe I won't do any, maybe I won't do surgery. But at the time, I was comfortable with my decision with the surgery.
And were you comfortable? And were you comfortable? I guess one of the questions Peter was trying to ask too. So, based on the type of cancer that you had,
Mhm.
was it in the fact that you did a double mastectomy, but the decision not to do chemo or radiation,
Well,
was
they
that
said
a
it was
difficult
going to
decision? Was
be,
it based on the type of cancer you
no,
had?
it was based on that I was not going to do the chemo. Like didn't
You
I
were
didn't want to put that in my body. I was willing to take things out of my body, but I wanted to do it through, nutraceuticals, homeopathy, supplements, changing my diet. Again, like I was super clean, but when you're in a health crisis, you have to be 100%. So I wasn't probably living 100% clean. I was probably, I was eating sugars and alcohol, and again, still clean and organic, but I was living my life. I wasn't, um, 100%. But that's one of the things that I learned when you're in the health crisis, go to 100%. When you're out of it, now I'm like, probably 85, 15, 90, 10. Um, but when you're in it, if you're going to do it the natural way, you go all in, whatever that is for you.
And when you say that, what do you think is important for somebody who makes that decision in terms of your regimen? How do you live your life now in terms of, do you think about that every day? Do you think about that at all?
So I get this question a lot. What type of tests do you do? What do you, I, I don't do, I don't do screenings like that. I do different types of screenings where it's more like energetic, with meridians. And I know that sounds kooky to some people. It screens all the organs in my body. I'm very much about the body's meant to work. Like my main motto in my life, and I say this to everybody, is the body's meant to work. And if it's not working, then we're doing something, whether we were born genetically, predisposed to that, or whether it's, something that we're eating or in our environment, whatever it is, the body innately wants to work. So how do we get back to that balance? So that's how I live my life now. I get blood tests once a year, but I don't do the cancer blood test. I do, you know, a full, spectrum of, I think I've shared my blood work with you. And most doctors don't, honestly, they don't even know how to read it. My doctor here doesn't really know how to read it. I had a doctor in Orlando that I had, that really helped me. I've also been to Hippocrates in Palm Beach. But basically, it's finding what works for you.
And
And I
so I'm sorry to interrupt. What kind of doctors do you see now? I mean, you said a doctor in Orlando. Do you have a local doctor? How do you follow up? I know you see somebody when it deals with energy. Is that an integrative doctor? What
so
kind of?
yeah, so it's more like functional medicine, integrative. Um, there's really cool machines now that could literally scan every organ in your body, like through meridians. Um, and for me, that makes the most sense. So I will say you have to find what makes the most sense, and you can't live in fear. So I think one of the things that helped me the most was, again, my belief in the power of the body, is very, very strong. I have a very strong connection to nature, and that has served me well. We tell people a lot in our office here, because people come in with, her, terrible back problems, herniations, and they'll show us their MRIs, and we say, you're not your MRI. And that's important. Like, you're not your diagnosis. Like, so people say, oh, you're a cancer survivor. And like Alana said, I don't really identify like that. I identify, like, I've had health challenges my whole life. The doctors I see always call me a puzzle. So it is a puzzle. Life, like my body is a puzzle, but I believe that it wants to be healthy, and I do all the things I can to support it. And then it's up to you
The
know.
universe. You know,
Well,
Lisa,
it's just, you know.
one of our listeners, Maureen, is asking. She says, "Did you find a centralized location, like an app or a nurse navigator, to help you make any of these decisions and lead you to the nutrition, the medicines, the therapy, anything to find that, or did you do that all on your own?"
So it's interesting. Again, I was lucky because I had 20 years of research in my belt. Like all of this was, I had already been following so many, way before cancer, holistic doctors, integrative doctors, different ways to, because look, I was the kid who had asthma and allergies and tired all the time. I was always skinny, so it was never like I ate like garbage. I always had stomach aches. At 21, I was like, this is not working for me, So I I was introduced to some very interesting people that were quote unquote off the grid that honestly got me on this path, and then it was my path, it was my journey. I felt very strongly about certain things and how I was going to raise my kids. And the more you start on that path, the more things you're going to be exposed to. So I started meeting very interesting people, and I was never I was never like the person who was not willing to like read something or like I'm going to listen to see what they have to say kind of thing. And
Did
that
you did you find that any, so you ended up not going to any what we would call traditional doctors, or
Well,
did you
just in the beginning,
just
right?
in the beginning?
Just in the
Mhm.
beginning, and then I probably, I had to do expanders for like I think 6 months, and then the switch in January. So that was, however, no, the switch came after. I don't know. I think the whole process was probably like 6 months. And then maybe like 6 months later, they found some weird cells in my uterus, and they wanted to do. I remember my brother's like, just get a hysterectomy, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. I had to do one more procedure. I actually forgot what it's called. I think a ovoectomy. I don't know, where they went in and they did something, and that was my last surgery. Like
You
I
were
was like,
done.
I'm done. I need to rebuild my body.
You've done that for the last 15 years.
And again, like, one of the things I get a lot is, oh, but you were all organic and healthy and you still got cancer. And I tell people, like, yeah, but gosh, how lucky was I? I felt like something was weird in my body, and I listened to it, and I made the changes. Like, our body is, because of the world we live in, is always going to be inundated with so much, you know, from the food, from the air, from the water, everything. So it's our job to like, don't get like stuck in your laurels, just because you do everything right, things happen. And I never felt like angry or why me. I was like, okay, well, it did happen to me, so let me show you what you can do. And instead of, like freaking out, it's kind of like press the pause button.
Yeah.
you
No, I
know
think you said that. I'm going to ask you something. You said there were three things. I mean, and you can just, you have, before we end, I want you to tell, you talked about a strong regiment, you talked about consistency, and you talked about attitude.
yeah.
And it sounds like that's, I know that's the way you live your life. I mean, in terms of consistency. And I think that's such an important thing. It's with anything in life, whether, it's your health, exercise, your eating. I mean,
Hmm.
the best 3-point shooters, right? They don't get 3-point shots because they tried it at a game. They practice day in and day out. I mean, it's consistency. I mean,
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
our
I would say
fans.
I talk less and do more. Like when people ask me, I will gladly share. Um, I've learned, I used to want to, save the world, and try and get everybody to do what I was doing because it worked. But I found that through the years, it was better to just live my life. And then, now people, so many of my friends and, obviously my family will come to me, oh, what is it that you do? What, how do you start your day? And, again, for me, it's finding, and even though I have a regiment, I'm not regiment. Like I love what I do. Like I love having, I wake up an hour earlier before I have to, because I enjoy the process of giving my body, like, honoring my body. It
Attention
makes
to
me
your
feel
body.
good. Yeah, it makes
So
me feel good.
uh, when listening to Sharon when she gives the tea talks, when she ends the tea talks, Lisa, and
Hmm.
you were, I think what you're talking about is so important for our listeners. Whether the handful that are on today or that will repost this, is that I think the message really is to listen to your body. But T talks, and Sarah and Sharon, they name T talks as the T cells or the cancer fighting cells and make you feel good, or the ones that beat everybody else up. What
Hmm.
would you leave us with? What would you tell us or tell the audience that will make us feel good? What's the most important thing?
I think the most important thing is to, number one, pause. Number two, like, really surround yourself with people who are going to support your lifestyle and your choices, because you don't want to fight with people and like defend yourself about the choices you make. Um, because there will be people that, again, will want you to do it a certain way. And I just think it's most important that you keep educating yourself and do your own research. Do your own research and see what feels right in your heart and in your gut, and eat all organic.
Thank you.
Exercise.
And thank you for coming in and sharing that. I mean, it's not easy because and I think the important thing for our audience, I mean, you always say this, I'm not a doctor. You're
I'm
not a
not.
doctor and you're not advocating any of those things, but it
Yeah,
worked for you. And,
correct.
it was what made you and, and who you are. And it's 15 years later and you're showing how strong you are. And, and
Fantastic.
she's in way better shape than most people. So, all right. Thank you so much for sharing it.
Yep.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.